Howdy folks, welcome back to Rowdy Muscle of Alaska. Today we're in a super top secret heated workspace that I could get myself into to do a little work on the old Highboy here. This is my 1967 F-250. If you guys aren't familiar with it, you should get familiar with it. Watch some old videos. And what we had was earlier this week, this thing was popping and farting and stuttering. It couldn't hardly haul its own butt up the hill. And well, that's not cool because, you know, got to drive up this hill to go home. So the issue, what I came up with was the distributor, because ran like garbage with the vacuum advance plugged in. I unplugged the vacuum advance and it ran just almost perfectly fine, which means the plate here in the distributor is not moving. Your vacuum advance, of course, works with vacuum, and what it does is under vacuum it pulls this plate to advance your timing when the engine has more vacuum or retard or something. I don't know. I'm no expert on this stuff. I don't claim to be, but with these old Fords like this one, what I found is that this plate wears out and it will move side to side instead of moving in the circular motion that it needs to. And so essentially what it was doing was it was pushing this little Protronix unit closer and farther from that plate. The other issue we have is, if you guys can see the movement in this distributor shaft, it has quite a bit of it, and that will mess with the dwell. That's getting closer, and then this is getting closer, and everything's just moving around when the engine's running under heavy load, and that would cause my timing issue. So by unplugging the vacuum advance, it wouldn't run perfect, but it would stop this plate from moving. As you can see, there's a whole lot of movement in that, and well, that's not cool at all. So what we're up to here is I've got a whole mess of distributor parts all laid out here, and what I went ahead and picked up was a new old stock Motorcraft distributor breaker plate off of eBay for super cheap, and this guy has no side-to-side movement. As you can see, if the vacuum advance, which would be hooked up here, pulls on this, it's going to move the points perfectly in a circular manner as opposed to a side-to-side manner and then kind of circular and whatnot, and that's a whole mess. So this guy was super cheap. It's brand new, of course. Here we have an old point set up out of a distributor I'm taking apart. I think I'm going to swap and mix and match distributors so I get a nice tight distributor shaft. Of course, there's a bushing here in the base of the distributor that gets worn out, and then that's the side-to-side movement in the distributor shaft. Here's another distributor shaft. I've got like 4 distributors all laid out here, and I'm going to mix and match and piece things together. Here's a gear off of one of them that's all covered in dirt. But yeah. Alrighty, and an unfortunate issue with our certain predicament here is that this distributor has to come out of the engine. I don't particularly like that because if anybody knows these old Ford engines, they have a drive shaft at the bottom of the distributor that goes and drives the oil pump down in the oil pan. And what happens is sometimes you'll pull the distributor out, that little oil pump will come out with it, or it'll come out part way and then get sideways and it'll go down in the oil pan. Or it'll just fall over a little bit sideways, and then it's just a whole pain in the butt to get your distributor back in. I'm not looking forward to that, but unfortunately, it's just the cost of doing business in this scenario. So one thing I'm going to do is go ahead and mark my rotor location and my vacuum advance location so I can get my timing sort of back the way it was when I'm done here. And then I'll go ahead and unhook my Protronix ignition, and then we can pull this distributor out. Alrighty, well, that's the distributor out of the pickup. Here it is. And it came with some good news and some less than good news. The not good news is that's my oil pump drive shaft. Came out with the distributor. It was like welded into the shaft there, which it really isn't cool, but I got it out. Now the big issue is I have to get that back down into my oil pump. In taking my distributor apart, this is the drive shaft out of it, or the main shaft, whatever you want to call it. And the main shaft here itself has all the wear in it, not the bushing. You can feel a ridge right there. So I'm going to use this drive shaft out of the other distributor that's not worn down near as much, but it did have some rust on it. You can see there used to be some rust down on the bottom, right there where the advanced mechanism was. So cleaning all of this up, and then I'm gonna have to look it up and see if I'm supposed to use oil or grease on this to lubricate it, because that's how you keep, never mind the furnace over there, that's how you keep these from wearing out like this one did. But I'm not too worried about it, so yeah, anyways, I'm gonna keep cleaning everything up and start throwing this distributor back together, hopefully get it back in the truck, and you know, fingers crossed it runs half decent. Alrighty, back again, and well, be honest with you, the only thing you guys are missing is a lot of laborious cleaning. I got this distributor housing cleaned up real nice, and then I'm going to use this shaft here. This is the old rusty one that I had laying here. I went through and cleaned it up good. I didn't want to get too heavy on everything, but I got most of the rust off, went ahead and greased everything up nice so that it's very smooth. Of course, this is your, I believe this would be your mechanical advance. Basically, the faster your distributor spins, these weights sling out and push the distributor to advance. And I went ahead, cleaned all that up, greased everything. When it's all said and done, there will be felt that goes in here. I think this other shaft here has it. Nope, fell out. But anyways, there should be felt in the top, and what you do every now and then is you pop the distributor cap off and you put some oil in there, and that oil seeps down and lubricates this so that it still moves freely. And that's very important. And then every now and then you want to take the plate off and put grease or oil or whatever on this advanced mechanism so that it stays moving free, unlike this, which was super rusty when I took all this apart. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and use this one because this shaft's wore out quite a bit. And then my new distributor plate, I'll use that. I'm not going to use my old distributor housing. This was the one that I just took out of the truck. My vacuum advance unit's good. I'm going to clean that up so it's nice and clean. Since I'm going through and doing this here backyard hack rebuild on a distributor, I figured I might as well clean everything and make it look sort of nice. And the other thing I should say is this cam here is what would open and close your points as it goes around. It would open and close them. Since I have the Protronic set up, the electronic ignition, I'm not super worried about this rust on it here. I cleaned it up a little bit, but yeah, that's not a big deal because the Protronics has a magnet that slips over this whole cam setup. And that's one of the things that's pretty nice about the Protronics is, of course, these cams here, they wear out and then they can't open your points as much. Just like a cam in your car, if it gets wore out, it can't lift the valve or open the valve as much. It can't push the lifter and open the valve near as much. And this is exactly the same thing. These wear out and then they can't open your points as much. And an easy fix for that is the Protronic setup. It just slips over that, and then it's the magnet. I believe they call that a Hall effect distributor pickup system. And that magnet basically acts as the points and opens and closes the Protronics unit internally to send the spark. So it's a pretty good system. This is still in decent shape. Yeah, it's got some rust on it. And the thing about my truck is I always want it to be the 67. I want this truck to be able to be fixed on the side of the road and whatnot. So I always pack with me a spare set of points, a condenser, and the wire and everything I need to swap my Protronics back to points if I'm stuck on the side of the road. The reason why I run the points is they're supposed to give you a hotter spark, better ignition, which should give you better fuel mileage. I don't know exactly, you know, how much of that it actually does, but I like the theory behind it. And so, yeah, anywho, I'm going to keep working on this. I'm about ready to put this shaft back into this housing and then get this whole thing assembled back together and hopefully back in the truck. Alrighty, got the thing all greased up and thrown in here, and I found the little felt that goes in there. Like I said, every now and then you just put a few drops of oil on that felt and that will go down and lubricate this mechanical advance mechanism down in here, keep everything working nice. So yeah, that just fell out when I knocked the gears off here, so they were just right there. Alrighty, so here's the progress on the old distributor. This is the one I'm putting back together. You can see I got my new breaker plate in there, everything's lubricated, thrown together. Got the roll pins in the distributor gear and the little bushing down there. So that guy's good to go. One thing I wanted to show you guys so that, you know, in case you were curious or you wanted to know, there were two different styles of breaker plates. These are breaker plates. These are what the points here mount on that you can see on this one. And this is the early style. It's a two-piece, and this is the later style. And so they swap back and forth. From what I've read and understand, this later style one-piece plate, like the one that I got new that I'm putting in this distributor, is 100% swappable with this old style two-piece. And this came out in like 1972 or something, and so you can just replace this whole assembly as opposed to this style, which has this top plate and then this bottom plate. And the issue with this older style is these little plastic buttons are what wear out, and then those will cause your timing to go all erratic and wild and crazy. And so yeah, but this one was actually in pretty good shape from what I could tell. You can see those three buttons there. They slide there, there, and there. You can see where they were sliding before. And yeah, so I'm going to hold on to this. I mean, I'm going to hold on to all these parts because, you know, why would you throw anything out? But yeah, you can see my old one was pretty wore out and sloppy, also really dirty. I never cleaned this distributor, my old one, when I put the engine together. I just had a good distributor. I threw it in and sent it. So it's going to be nice. I'll have a clean, new, all lubricated, good to go distributor. I know this was kind of a backyard hack rebuild, but I think it'll get me down the road, or at least we'll see in a moment. So yeah, I'm going to finish throwing this thing together. Okie dokie, just like that, I've got this guy all put back together. Got my Pertronics unit all set up in there, and I set the gap on it. As I recall, the gap between the Pertronics unit here and this little magnet wheel was 0.030, and that's what I set it up as, so we'll see if it still works. And then, yeah, this thing should be ready to install. I just have to figure out how to get my oil pump drive shaft back down into the oil pump, so. Well, see that little guy in there? Yeah, I got that little guy in there. I got the oil pump drive shaft dropped down in there in the right spot. What I ended up doing was filling the end of the distributor with grease and shoving the oil pump drive shaft up in there so it kind of had suction to hold it in there, and then just carefully drop that distributor down in so that the oil pump drive shaft would get into the oil pump. And then if you see this guy, I use this little oil pressure gauge and set it up there, and then I crank the engine over for a second to assure that it makes oil pressure so I don't start it and, you know, the oil pump drive shaft's not in there, and then, you know, what a mess. So yeah, makes oil pressure, distributor's in there. So now I just got to put everything that I've taken apart back together, hook the coil back up, put the cap back on, put my electric oil pressure gauge on, the oil filter down there, and then this thing should be running, and we'll see how it does. Alrighty, well, as you guys saw there, I got her running again. For whatever reason, the timing was a little bit off. I had to push the distributor way over to get it to start and to get it into a decent time range. Tuned on the carburetor a little bit, and I think I got it running pretty good. This is just one of those things I'm going to have to tune on it a little bit as I go along. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It runs way smoother, and there's absolutely no popping or anything out the exhaust like I had before. You guys obviously have no idea how it was before because, well, I never gave you a video of how it was before. But at an idle, it would just kind of pop out of the exhaust every now and then. And then at about 1500 RPM, you just had absolutely no power. And I think that's would have been when the Vacuum Advance had the distributor plate right up against the rotor or the cam, the lobe there on the distributor shaft. And right there is where the dwell was all kinds of messed up, and that would have been where my issue was. And so yeah, it's running, seems to be running a lot better now. I'm gonna have to run it up the road tomorrow and see how it feels. But for right now, I've got my aluminum valve covers. I'm gonna throw those on and actually plumb myself in a PCV system so this thing doesn't just drool oil all over the place like it's been doing. And then I can fix my plug wires. I have them up in front of this oil cap because if they're behind, then all that oil goes back. And well, these are brand new plug wires, so yeah. Anyhow. Alrighty, well, I'd say we're just about done. We got our distributor rebuilt, and that worked out pretty good. You can see my spare ones are back here. Sorry about cleaning stuff up back here. And one thing I'd say, if anybody wants to try this, don't do it unless you have a few different distributors laying around that you can rob parts off of. Hey, if I didn't have extra distributors, this wouldn't have worked out at all, because this is my old one with the worn out shaft. This is one, I think it's out of a small block because it has the shorter distance, but the gear should be the same. I have no idea, but I used the one out of the other FE. One thing I'd say, these distributor gears are a royal pain in the butt to get off and get back on. I actually broke that one. You can see it's missing a tooth, chipped it right off, and so I kind of feel bad about that, but you know, live and learn, and that's what I was doing. See, this gear is completely different. I literally have no idea what this is out of. I think it's a 460 or something. If somebody knows exactly what that's out of, you know, throw it in the comments down below so I have some idea. But yeah, anyhow, if you've got a bunch of distributors laying around and you want to try and rebuild one or put them all together into one good one, I definitely say go for it. They're super easy and intuitive once you get after it. If you have this one piece breaker plate design, it's just these two screws, and the two pieces, the two screws as well, but you have to get the top plate off first, I think, or maybe you don't, I don't know. But yeah, and then the whole advance mechanism, those are really important to clean out every now and then. That whole thing, you want to clean that out nice and lubricate it so those little weights can go out. Essentially what happens is when this thing gets spinning fast enough, those little weights fling out and they will advance it. You can see how the top part's moving and the bottom part's not. So those need to be lubricated and made sure they work well, because if that doesn't work, then you'll have, you know, and a weird spot in your timing where it's not really working as well because that's not advancing it and whatnot. And then, you know, you have your vacuum advance and all that. They do remake these. I only have one good one. Both of these here are completely junk. But I think sometimes they charge a core charge because they rebuild these. They just take them apart and throw a new diaphragm in there is all it is. But yeah, I was lucky enough, like I said, I've got a whole bunch of parts distributors laying around. If you don't have a bunch of parts distributors laying around or you don't have time, reman distributors just like $150 from O'Reilly's. It's no sweat at all. I just really didn't want to spend that extra $150, and I figured, you know, rebuilding a distributor is something I've never done before, so we'll just give her hell and see how it turns out. So anyways, thanks for watching. Making improvements on the old Highboy here. As always, you know, hoping to make it better and better. So yeah, until next time, guys, I'll see ya.